have Rebecca Harris. Rebecca Harris is an innovator and entrepreneur with over 30 years of experience providing transformative leadership and delivering best practice-driven solutions. She has expertise in starting and growing companies and has provided professional services for both nonprofit and for-profit organizations, specializing in the area of intrapreneurship. She graduated from Northwestern University as a communications studies major, received her MBA from the Fox School of Business at Temple University, and is a member of the Leadership Pittsburgh 27 class. Rebecca is currently the president and founder of RUH Consulting LLC, a firm providing consulting services to develop innovative, strategic, and targeted solutions for organizations. She is very committed to supporting initiatives, partnerships, and policies which result in genuine and long-lasting economic inclusion, as exemplified by her tenure as the executive director of Center for Women's Entrepreneurship in Chatham University, where she served from April 2009 to September 2019. So Rebecca, I'll let you get started.
Thank you. All right, you guys, this is my first debut, like in person, behind the screen, but in person. So like if I do something really crazy, you'll be like, you're in person. Got it? Okay, great. I'm really honored to be here today. And I took an Uber over. Great business, love it, love it. And the woman in the Uber, love that women can drive Ubers. This is great as well. And that there's these little security buttons and all those things that you need if you're a driver or a passenger. And she said to me, do you know that today is National Creativity Day? I'm like, really? Is it really? That made me really happy, because when you think about what it takes to be an entrepreneur, you have to think creatively, and there can be no box. People say, think outside the box. My feeling is there shouldn't be any boxes. So that's sort of where we are. So I think that, as you all probably know, the need for entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship is more critical now than ever. We're navigating post-COVID. We're navigating global affairs that are moderately turbulent, wouldn't you say, after what's happened over these last even few weeks. And we're looking at really an economic change, a climate change, however you want to define it, but there's huge changes happening in our country now. When I think back 20 years, I think, did I face these same kind of issues that you all are going to be facing now? Because you all have to be the solution. It's your time. And you're in this amazing place. You'll be able to learn so much. Even if it doesn't seem consequential, take it in, because it is so important. So we're going to talk about acting and thinking like an entrepreneur. And we're going to talk about agility, ingenuity, ability, pivot, embrace. So this is some of my background. Alex, it's just not going forward, but we're going to make it go forward. You can make it. I tried, but it's not happy, but that's okay. This is a first session. Okay, it works now. These are all the things that I did. Ran the Center for Women's Entrepreneurship. I had great awards. I got to go to several White House roundtables where this is during the Obama administration. We looked at how to help small businesses. I feel fortunate that I'm on a number of boards now, and I have a company where I do consulting work to help people really think entrepreneurially and intrapreneurially. What you might not know about me is, one, I started a company that made no cholesterol cookies and brownies in the late middle 80s, which dates me, but my dad had really high cholesterol. And so if you're a true entrepreneur, somebody gives you a problem and you're like, got to solve it. Like, there's not a question of if he was going to be able to eat no cholesterol cookies and brownies, but how he could eat them. And so I developed some bakery recipes based on old cookie and brownie recipes that my mom had, but they were no cholesterol. And I went into industrial bakeries, and they were called Beckys No Cholesterol Delights. Eat them to your heart's content. Drove around in my little car. We lived out east at the time. My husband was in law school. He liked testing that product more than the next one, which I'll tell you about. The reason that product was not a home run was a lot of the big guys got into it. We actually had written to Entenmann's, and those of you who might know it, it's a bakery company, and we said, why aren't you making no cholesterol brownies and cookies? This was before Lipitor, all those drugs that take down people's cholesterol. And they said there'll never be a market for no cholesterol products. And I was like, wrong. But I couldn't scale it. I could not scale it. And do people need no cholesterol products like cookies and brownies? We're going to talk about that. Or do they want them? The next product, went to business school. The next product was a huge net that you could swim in. It was called a nettle knot. Nettles are jellyfish that are indigenous to the Chesapeake Bay. Well, we bought a house out in the Chesapeake Bay. My folks did. I'm from St. Louis originally, but you couldn't swim in the summer. Like, that's so crazy. We didn't really know that. So my dad and I and a boat builder invented a big, huge net that you could swim in so you wouldn't be stung by jellyfish. And I got a patent for it. Now, the problem was it was very cumbersome to make. It was not easy to automate it and to scale it up hard, really hard. And do people need to swim jellyfish free, or could they go somewhere else and swim? Okay, so the third company, in between some consulting work and working for some nonprofits, was a publishing company. And this company was a company, my daughter was just born. We had moved to Toledo, Ohio. My husband's a law professor. He works at Pitt now. I knew nothing about raising kids. I mean, I had gotten an MBA. I was 30 at the time. And I was like, I can do this. And I had no freaking clue. Like, they don't really give you handbooks. There are, at that time, no internet. There were books on how to do it, a few magazines, but I had no idea how to really do it. So I met a woman in a parking lot. And I'm like, could you be my friend? And I really did say that. Would you please be my friend? And I don't know anybody here in Toledo, Ohio. I didn't even know where Toledo, Ohio was, really. Anyway, so long story short, we started a publishing company. I had seen parent newspapers in other cities. Again, pre-internet, this is 1991, and parents so desperately needed information. They needed the connection, and the way you got it was to connect with other parents, reading. I mean, it was huge. So I started Toledo Area Parent News. We started a baby paper. We started a city paper on a kitchen table with $750 each. I found a woman who was a graphic designer, and I did all the sales and marketing. And she said to me, if you can sell ads, I'll do it. So I subsequently went out and I sold ads, and they were free publications. And long story short, by 1998, at that point, we were $1 million company. Now, were we grossing $1 million or were we netting $1 million? Raise your hand if I was grossing or netting. Gross, the total amount brought in, that's the right answer. Net means less your expenses. I didn't pay myself until maybe the 7th year, okay? And we had employees, and we had all the issues you had, like at some point, 25 full and part-time employees and distribution people and graphic design people and everything else. But when I hit the $1 million mark, the accountant said to me, you made $1 million. Oh my God, we're there this year. It's $1 million. And I said, can I make payroll? Can I pay any of my people? And so you really get a sense of, as an entrepreneur, you find a problem, you solve the problem. We won all these awards. It was so fun and challenging and great. But were we really making money, and could it be sustainable? I sold my half of the company to my partner in 1998, 99. I stayed on for a little while, and the publications are still going today, which is huge. And they're online and they're virtual, and they did some more up in Detroit. The key to any real business or company or nonprofit is that it has to exist after the people leave. If you're a true entrepreneur, you have to realize it is not about you. You might have a great idea. You're only as good as your worst employee, and you better be able to take that idea and package it and put together the way you made it and give it to the next person, because you're going to get tired. 10 years I was gone, did a lot of other things. I got some money. I got my names off of all the loans and everything else, and went to the next venture. And so the most important lesson in all those things was, Of those three products, cookies, brownies, Annette, or parent information, which one do people need? What did they need of those three? I'm just calling you because you look really nice. So what do they need? Information. What do they want? Can you? They want cookies. They want to swim jellyfish free. You have to look at whatever you're doing and make sure it's something that people need. I need dark chocolate every day, but I would not say that other people would value that as a real need. Medicine, food, information, etc. What you want, though, a lot of companies, as we know, have turned wants into needs. If I want a drink of water, do I really need to have this bottle here? No, we would all say no. I mean, I asked for a bottle of water. They said, of course. But now I feel like I need to have my own private bottle of water, especially with COVID. I want it. I know it's clean, but we all know packaging in plastic is terrible for everything, and sitting in plastic is terrible. But need versus want. And so those are the kind of things that I really want you to think about as you're moving forward and thinking about what you're going to do in your career. Now, next. How many of you currently are or want to be entrepreneurs? Just raise your hand. There's no judgment here. We're just going to go through a series of really fast questions. Okay, are or want to be. Cool. I love it. And the next question becomes, how many right now have a truly viable market-tested concept or an entrepreneurial concept? Maybe that you're going to start this soon. Anybody? Okay. I mean, you kind of do? Okay, kind of is good. I like kind of. How many of you think that you would rather work in a more established organization and not be entrepreneurs? Like, you know, maybe a place like Carnegie Mellon, it can be for-profit, nonprofit, but your life isn't on the line in the same way. Anybody think they want to do that? I thought that during my lifetime, believe me. So that's a different way of thinking. How many of you have had work experience outside of school as employees or as entrepreneurs? Any? Cool. Oh my gosh, that's great. Okay, so how many of you crossed the $1 million mark, grossing $1 million in a for-profit venture? I have? You have? Yes. Okay, well, that's all good. You're associated with it. You get the good mojo, and yeah, that's good. Okay. And my next question is, how many of you have generated more than $1 million for a nonprofit organization? When I worked at Chatham, I worked and got grants and sponsors, and we were able to realize money that really made it so that we got over the $1 million mark. And only 6% of all businesses get over the $1 million mark. 6%. And the number of female-owned businesses over the mark, the $1 million mark, I hate to say is smaller. But that's a huge thing. So how many of you come up with ideas and products during the pandemic? Anybody? Like you were stuck at home, I would assume most of you were off campus or at home. You did. Oh, good. Do you want to share it with us?
Yeah, so I was trying to facilitate online education.
So working on an education project when you were in India, when you were home. Okay, and it was code online. Is that what it was, or?
I was trying to connect educators from metropolitan cities with students from studying in India.
Brilliant. I love that. Okay, that is awesome. So what I have to say about that is you were acting entrepreneurially, and that was a lens for everything. And so here's the bottom line. Even if you're not going to work as a true entrepreneur, meaning you are funding a business, you're starting it up. When I went to the Center for Women's Entrepreneurship, the money had run out. I had to raise money over 10 years. I had to develop new products and services. I had to hire people. I had a budget. It sounds like a business, doesn't it? Now, was I responsible directly for payroll? Yes and no. If I didn't make my numbers, we were all out. So in many ways, I mean, this organization here, this is a nonprofit entity, but let me just tell you, everybody's looking at budgets and bottom lines and innovation and agility. You guys had to go virtual. Like, who wanted to go virtual? Like, I could barely breathe in this mask, and we're gonna have to be wearing these for a while. So I want to tell you something that's really, really important. Even if you think of traditional entrepreneurs as people who work in established for-profit or nonprofits, all of you, as you enter those organizations, are going to have to think about, How are you going to solve the world's problems? Because we have some pretty serious problems. Now, this I love. During the pandemic, it resulted in an unprecedented surge in new businesses, second half of 2020 into 2021. And many were started by people who were Gen Zs, under 25. And they want to have their own business soon. And when you think of what that means, it's really important because they're at home, they're trying to figure out how to exist, they're in a vacuum, and they're thinking about products. Now, this I want to share with you. The disruptions caused by the huge pandemic and all entrepreneurial activities, McKinsey and Company reported that between December 2021 and December 2019 and July 20, the average share of products and services that were partly or fully digitized increased from 35% to 55%. So basically we did digitization, which should have lasted over 5 years or 7 in almost half a year. It was unbelievable. And this was an acceleration that was 7 years ahead of the average rate of adoption from 2017 to 19. So when you think of all the things that have been digitized in the last 2 years, it's unbelievable. So I think that as you think of opportunities, healthcare, pharmaceutical, financial, professional services, there's a lot there. Okay. When I talk about entrepreneurial thinking, the ability of ordinary people to think creatively, individually, collectively, to rise above their circumstances and to really solve problems and really to better the world, because the challenge is you see a need or a want and you see a problem that hasn't been solved. What was your problem in India? Would you help us? Just tell us what the problem was and I'll.
Yeah, when COVID hit, it's essentially established in India, and that's really important. That's pretty much.
So, okay, so the central exam when you're in India and COVID hit, you couldn't go take the central exam? Was it? Oh, they need tutors, in-person tutors, right? Ah. You still have to take the exam, but you can't have in-person tutors. That is a problem. That is a need. That is a definite need, right? Okay. So what happened? Oh, that's awesome. So basically, I'm sort of summarizing for our Zoom audience. You cultivated high-level tutors to work with people digitally when that had not existed. You were meeting a need, you were providing a valuable service. And I don't know if it's going to continue, but that is a great, great thing to do. And you did it because you saw a problem existed. So when we look at entrepreneurship now, it's not mainstream. It's not just Silicon Valley. It's not new venture. It's not just how am I going to get some VC money. It's not just tied to financial success. It's really the ability to solve problems and create value for other people. I think that that's so important because you might say, well, I'm going to go work in a large corporation. I'm going to go work for PNC. Everything's pretty established. But here's the key. You can work at PNC and they're a great company. But what's your new product or service? What's your new delivery? How are you going to stand out? How are you going to make sure that people know that you are of value to stay and to climb the ladder? So I believe that it doesn't matter what kind of organization you're in, whether it's CMU, Pitt, PNC, well, the list goes on, for-profit, nonprofit, you have to think about creating value for other people and solving problems. So, and we talked a little bit about this earlier. Why it's critical, global advancements, robotics, artificial intelligence, climate change. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And we really know that entrepreneurship is the single most important player in the modern economy because entrepreneurs create new products and services. They hire, so they're creating jobs, and they improve the overall quality of our lives. And gosh, but you can do that within a company. I gave a similar talk to Alcoa, Arconic Alcoa, out in New Kensington a while ago. And they took it around the world and they said, why do we really need to think about entrepreneurship? And I said, well, here's the thing. You have team over here, but they're not telling teams over here of the new things that they're developing and inventing. Those people aren't finding out. You're not creating new value, new services, new products for the company. You're staying in your little sieves, and you cannot do that if you want to grow a company, a big corporation. So why do you think Google has playtime and great snacks and music areas and art? That is not because they necessarily want to be nice to their employees, which they are. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but it's so you can have downtime to be creative. They want you to spend the 15% of your time thinking about what's going to be next, and not tomorrow, but what's going to happen in 5 years from now. And that's what you guys have to do. You have to look at trends that are coming out 5 years from now or 10. I love this quote. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we use to create them. And it's not a thing that you necessarily inherently do, although some of us were born like I built a skating rink in my backyard when I was young with my father. We live in St. Louis, Missouri. For those of you who have been there, it doesn't get very cold there. But I thought to myself, we got this big area in the back, and why shouldn't we build a skating rink? Because then people wouldn't have to go all the way to the ice rink. They could skate here. I could charge them. So my dad and I built a skating rink. His day job was a lawyer. Okay, so he had, other things going on. We built the ice skating rink, and sadly, none of us were engineers. We probably could have used some of you because there was a slight decline down. I mean, just very slight, but we just built it in banged wood and put it in plastic and put it in the water. And I think it froze once and maybe half of it. And it killed all my mother's lovely azalea, beautiful plants in the backyard as the water just leaked over the side. But I learned how to read the stock market pages because we had paper on the floor while we were building. And I also realized this want versus need. If they really wanted to ice skate in a quality place, I was not going to meet their need. And so you could come up with a product or service, but nobody needs it. And that is a huge problem. And that is something that people do all the time. It means you haven't done real analysis, you haven't done focus groups, you haven't found out what the market research shows. So we're going to practice. Okay, before we start, who can tell me who Elizabeth Holmes is? Anybody? Okay, go ahead. Right. She was a multi-billion-dollar entrepreneur. She came up with a product called Einstein, which was her super secret way of taking one drop of blood and being able to tell like 164 tests from it is what she claimed. Why did she come up with this product? Do you know why? People need it, but why do they need it? So here's the thing. It's not possible to do that many tests in a timely manner with just a drop of blood, which turned out to be faulty because when you take blood from a person's finger, to do all those tests, she had to dilute it and put it through other machines. Fraud. It got contaminated with some of the skin bacteria, not pure sample. And it couldn't do all the tests that she said. But the need was there because I did a lot of reading about her. She was terrified of needles. Now, raise your hand if you're terrified of needles. Come on, come on, come on. Up, 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 up. You guys, I mean, come on. You're working, I know, but who wants a needle in your arm? Nobody. Nobody. Do you know that at least 1/3 of all blood tests are not done because of fear of needles? And she herself was terrified of needles, this woman. And I can go on about her, but she's in the news now. So she's a great example and somebody we should talk about. So there is a need. We know blood tests are unmet. Having a prick versus having to go in and, do this. And if you're giving blood, you have to have blood. Let me just tell you, drink a ton of water before. They never tell you that. but it's easier to give blood. A ton, like 4 cups of water, because then your veins aren't dehydrated. I learned that from reading all this stuff. Anyway, so what did she do that was wrong? She had a product, people needed it. What happened? You know, go ahead. Say it again. Her expectations were unrealistic about what she could accomplish with that 1 drop of blood. What else did she do wrong? She cheated? Oh yeah, she totally cheated. So there was total hubris involved. She thought she could keep the real story from all the shareholders and the people that believed in her, because she was working on the principle of fake it till you make it. Who knows of that principle? Fake it till you make it. Write that down. It's very important. How many entrepreneurs start that way? Let's just name one that you know. Okay, who's got a phone? Hold up your phone. Let me see your phones. Phones. Does anybody remember what happened when Steve Jobs came out with the first phone? It was cruddy. It didn't work. So what happened was, and if you start digging for this stuff, Steve Jobs was brilliant. There's no doubt about that. But what happened was, it was riddled with bugs. Apple couldn't predict. He was flaunting it as a no blunder single product that could show you movies and take pictures, everything our phones can do now. But the problem was the device did not operate as it should have, and he would trade out the cell phones when he was doing demos. So if he wanted to show, a picture, he'd take one with a picture, and then he'd take the next one off and say, and then you can see what happens when I talk on the phone, and then he'd take another one, and you can, because one of them could not do everything that he promised that it could. So the bandwidth was no good, and it hurt the radio signals. And the phone's displays were also pre-programmed to show 5-bar internet connection, even though at that time most Wi-Fi signals weren't as strong. So it was a brilliant fake it till you make it. Now, was it fraud? You could argue that he was brilliant, and I think Elizabeth Holmes is probably brilliant too, but I think she's a little devious. I think he knew that he could come out with that product eventually and it would be right. What do you guys think? Do you agree? I mean, was that the kind of thing where eventually he thought, I'm going to fake it until I know I can make it? So you got to be really careful as an entrepreneur, because you don't want to lose the integrity that you have. Elizabeth Holmes no longer has any integrity. No one will start a business with her. And if you look at her board of directors, most of them, I don't think any of them were medical people. She wouldn't let anybody see the Einstein product. And she, from the very beginning, knew that this was a great idea, but couldn't follow through with it. And she swindled a lot of people. Will she go to jail? I don't know. So when we think about some of our most pressing problems, back then, cell phones. Everybody wanted a cell phone. It was going to happen. I think right now, especially with COVID, having a 1-prick blood test would be awesome, right? You don't have to go in and give all this blood if you want to do like an antibody test. So I wanted to ask you all, and we're going to sort of ask our Zoom audience as well, okay? What are some of our most pressing problems and trends that we envision over the next decade? So I'm just going to ask you guys to participate, and I'll say what you say because they might not be able to hear it. So what do you guys think? Pressing problem. Say it again. Human connections, huge. And I know that Allison is going to capture some of these. Oh, yes, and Alex is too. Human connections. Okay, love it. How about you? Okay, so how would we tell me how we're accurate diagnoses? Is that what you're saying is going to become a really pressing problem? Why?
Because, like, for example, chemotherapy, a lot of patients are not actually respond to the chemo. Well, it's very like it has a lot of side effects.
side effects from chemo and people don't necessarily respond. Okay, so
So if you have this like personalized diagnosis, a lot of people can avoid this chemotherapy.
okay, so an accurate diagnosis, but on top of that, a customized cure, a specific cure. I mean, I think that's where that leads, right? Okay, good. How about you?
Climate change.
Climate change, da, 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 climate change. I mean, it was so hot today. Like, really, it's the middle of September. Okay, what's the deal? It's such a problem. I grew up in St. Louis. When I flew in last week to see my parents, the rivers were dry, like the Mississippi River. Like, you can't have that happen. The Colorado River drying up. What are people going to do? It's impossible. So, okay, good. You? Homelessness. Homelessness and poverty are huge problems. The divide between the haves and the have-nots continues to grow. And in the wake of COVID too, I would say that it's become even worse. Okay, how about you? Oh, okay, no, either one, go ahead, and then we'll go back. Yeah, go ahead. No, it's okay. Cybersecurity. How many people have changed their passwords in the last year? You guys are much better than most. Okay, let's just say we all forget to do that. You know, you think of companies like 3M getting hacked and huge companies getting hacked. We take it for granted. Here's this little phone, and really, I'm carrying around such a powerful device with all my passwords and my banking information and credit cards, and I feel like it's safe. Huh. Yeah, probably I shouldn't like delete everything. Okay, what do you think? Uh-huh. Too much content. That is a really interesting concept because you're right. I mean, I'm a reader, I'm a paper person. We get newspapers still delivered to our house. That's very rare now. We get magazines in the New Yorker and the Atlantic and the Economist, and then I have online stuff. And sometimes I just throw it all down. But who's going to cultivate and also real information versus fake news? Let's just, I mean, okay. How about you in the back? Yeah. Okay, say it again. Loss of jobs because of technology. I totally agree with you. So how are we going to deal with that? Education. I think that is 100% correct. But let me just say to you, what kind of education? Does everybody need to go to college? Do people need to go to CMU? Do they need to go to Chatham? Or could they get experience and learn how to be a plumber? Because let me tell you how many plumbing problems my 1904 house has in Point Breeze, because what do old houses have? They're made out of limestone, they have old pipes, right? And we have an old housing stock in the United States in general, maybe not as much on the East, but we also have a ton of water all the time that we didn't have. So that is a perfect answer. How about you? Ineffective education. Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit more. What does that mean? Wow, that's really, so let's summarize that and call that ineffective teaching, ineffective education. What would the summary be? Yep. They end up not working. All right, so ineffective educational almost transfer or absorption or something like that. Okay, I think that's awesome. Should I? Yes, Allison, go ahead. Addiction to social media. How many people have checked their cell phone in the last hour? Although you might not be allowed to now, and I really appreciate that, but think about it. Okay, addiction to social media. Misinformation all around, right? Like what? How do you call what's true anymore? Like really? I could read the New York Times and believe it was true. Is it true? I don't know. I think it's true. Go ahead. Women's health, huge problem. A lot of synthetic stuff out there. Women's health, big problem. Okay, any more? Okay, you guys want to say anything? I know you're over here working, but if you have any problems, just raise your hands. Cool. Got a problem? Can you think of a problem?
The social media was big.
Social media is a huge one. It's huge. You? Anything? Right. Climate change is really significant. Okay, so we've started a great list. Now, from here, where are we going to go? We could just go home and cry, but we're not going to do that. We're going to go forward. All right. Now, I want you to look at this. Is this great or what? This is so great. Who knows what this is? Go.
Dynamic dog robot.
Dog robot. What's its name?
I don't know.
Spot. Its name is Spot. Okay, who made it? It's okay. You don't have to know. It's a company called Boston Robotics, I believe. Okay, what does this do? What can it be used for? Go ahead. What do you think? Here's a dog robot. What can we use this for? Yeah, Alex, can you write this down too? Okay, we can use it for earthquakes. After an earthquake to search for people. Love it. What else? Go. Yeah. Say it one more time. As waiters in a restaurant. Why not? I mean, it could replace people as jobs. Brain drained. Oh gosh, that's really frightening. Okay, a brain drain. What else? Come on, think big, think really big. Go.
I suppose when we tried something with construction workers and it's supposed to bring the tools to them up the flight of stairs.
Love it, love it. So supplementing construction workers. All right, let's think about disasters. What about disasters? Rescue, right. If you can send regular dogs in, but regular dogs might die from the fumes, etc. I mean, 9/11, I hate to say, this would have been really great, right? I mean, so these robots are becoming prevalent. So those are some of the things they can solve. Now, how about this? What about leaks in gas piping? What about industrial situations in large plants where stuff, you can't go into it? What about nuclear? I mean, if there's a problem in a nuclear plant, you can't send a person in, you just can't. So I think robots, and also what's being now called cobots, which are working with the people collaboratively, is really, really important. So here's a problem though. Okay, Alex, that's great, thanks. Here's a problem. This dog was recently used to go into a housing project in New York during a disturbance where people were, I don't know, messing around, something bad was happening. The police sent this dog in. What do you think is going to happen? The people were terrified. The ACLU, American Civil Liberties Association, and others expressed concern that without real regulation, these devices, which are remotely controlled, could eventually become autonomous and make decisions based on police behavior and racial bias. I mean, that robots are very powerful, and there's privacy concerns. What if they're being used as weapons? Yes, I love the gas leak and the faulty infrastructure, but should they be going into places where people are already afraid of regular dogs? You see something like this coming at you at 50 miles an hour, like how fast can this run? You would be terrified. And is that going to do what we need, which is personal intervention? So I'm going to put up a couple more trends and let's comment on these. Okay, artificial intelligence, machine learning, the Internet of Things. What isn't on the internet now? Like, I don't know, like food, I don't know if food is. I mean, you can get food. Food isn't literally popping out of the screen, but wearables, augmented humans, big data, augmented analytics. I love intelligent spaces and smart places. I mean, I'm sure that this has a lot of smart place components. Blockchains, distributed ledgers, cloud computing. I mean, these are just a few of the things I think that are trends. And so what you all have to think about in your work and what you do is whatever you think you're really good in, if you're good in digital reality or natural language processing, where machines can understand language, or computer vision and facial recognition. Should we have that? Should we not have that? How can you get involved in some of these trends and make a difference for the better in society? You could do it within companies. You could do it as an entrepreneur. What about autonomous vehicles? I mean, I think they're fabulous. People are terrible drivers. Let me just tell you how many times my daughter has had accidents. Like, she's just not thinking. But what's out there now, is it any better? Not sure. And should we have autonomous trucks? You've seen truck drivers on the roads who are like half asleep. Now, 5G, what do you guys think about 5G? Is that going to revolutionize things? We have so many digital platforms. We have Facebook and Uber and, you know, Airbnb, and they've become household names. So does everything become a platform? And if it does, what does that mean for you starting a business or being part of a business? Cybersecurity, which we talked about. What about drones and unmanned aerial vehicles? Drones are a little creepy. You know, I gotta say, I've seen several drones and I just was like, what? Now, robotic process automation. I believe that there are certain jobs that should be done by robots. People's lives are in jeopardy. I mean, people who worked in coal mines, I mean, so many of them have lung diseases and terrible diseases. And there are places where it would be much better to have robots. Or in surgery. I mean, certain surgeries where the human hand cannot do this, and that would be great. 3D printing, I love it, except for if you're making guns with it. Nanotechnology. So those are some of the things I really want you guys to think about as you're moving forward. Allison, give me a time. Okay, so we have we'll do 5 more minutes and take questions. Okay, so the most important thing is not to think what the problem is right this second, but to think about what the problems are going to be in the future. What is going to happen in the future that you guys can figure out today? That is how you will be best served. And where do you position yourself to be? I love this person. I read about her in the New York Times. She's actually a Pittsburgh native. She lives in Upper St. Clair now. She's a venture capitalist, Ms. Jin. I don't know if you all know her. I did not. And she sits at the intersection of startup investing and fast-growing ecosystem of online creators and influencers. Now, my kids know like influencers, and they take influencers seriously. But this whole business of online influencers and who's going to invest in them and where does that take us? Like, she gets that whole package. So a lot of people go to her for advice. That's an area that I wouldn't have even thought about. Okay, so entrepreneurial think, this is really what you have to do. Be optimistic and approach your work as a business, not a hobby. I work with a lot of people who said, I'm going to start a cookie company like me. And so I said to them, well, how many are you going to bake? Are you going to be baking in the thousands? No, I'm going to make them out of my home. It's kind of a hobby. If you decide that you want to go into entrepreneurship, it cannot be a hobby, it is a business. And can you create products and services that people need and a brand? A lot of people think that a brand is like a fancy logo or a name. But we talked about social media. You can't buy a brand through Google AdWords or emailing list. It really involves earning customer trust and doing great work. And you have to take risks and you have to become an expert in your field. So whatever field you've chosen, you have to really learn it. You have to study it. You have to become an influencer really in some ways, okay? And passionate about your product or service. Do not do something you don't care about. Like, get out of it. Like, go, leave. Because why should you waste your valuable brain power and energy doing something that you're not passionate about? And I think that's really critical. Briefly, intrapreneurship and entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is really a person or team who assumes direct responsibility for the development of an idea. Intrapreneurship is entrepreneurs within existing organizations. New products, new services, new ways of doing things, crossing over. The biggest thing that I found is crossing over divides in areas. Well, they're the engineers and they're the designers. They shouldn't really be talking. Well, of course they should be talking. So it's pushing limits. And entrepreneurs are really, really important as we move forward and think about what that means in existing organizations, because if you keep doing the same thing you've always done. And organizations really need entrepreneurs. So if you're going to apply to work at an existing company, you have to talk to them about why you really think entrepreneurially. Like that would be the most attractive thing you could put on your resume. I've experienced doing this. I've initiated this. I think entrepreneurially. I want to solve problems. I want to encourage integration and problem solving among the businesses. That's what I want to do. I'm not just going to come and make widgets or design such and such. I want to increase the value of the company. And best practices in entrepreneurship, like being creative, like, okay, have 100 crazy ideas. When I worked at the Center for Women's Entrepreneurship, every day I would come out with so many ideas. Now I had a nice team and they'd be like, no, yeah, maybe, no. And so, but I was just pushing and pushing. And when you have an idea inside a large company, you should incubate it inside the company and test it. And then you share the content across the company, because if you share content with all these people at CMU, there's so many people that are so brilliant here. Think what you could do. You could create amazing things, but it's hard. You have to push to make that happen. And I always say that organizations must support entrepreneurs. Do what Google does. It's fabulous. Build a culture of innovation and agility and give them money. Okay, get involved. Look at what are you reading? What are you listening to? What doesn't exist now in the ecosystem that you can make all these ideas we had and even more. This is me. This is my contact information. I have my cards. I think you guys are amazing and that you have amazing futures. But take risks and ask. The only dumb question is the one you do not ask. Thank you. Thank you.